The night begins as all nights do in this place, with a slow and gentle lifting away from the world of waking. There is no sudden rush, no jolt or surprise, only the soft and steady feeling of rising, as though carried by a breeze that knows exactly where to go. The air is cool against the skin, not cold, but refreshing in the way that night air always is when it is traveled across wide stretches of open water. It smells faintly of salt, and beneath that, something sweeter, like the crushed petals of jasmine flowers that grow wild along the island's hidden paths. There is no need to hurry, no need to do anything at all, except drift and breathe and let the night hold us in its quiet embrace. The lifting sensation is so gradual that it is barely noticeable. At first, just a slight change in the feeling of weight, a subtle shift in the relationship between body and ground. It is not unlike the feeling of lying in shallow water, where the body is supported both by the earth beneath and by the water around it, held in a state of gentle suspension that requires no effort to maintain. We simply allow it to happen, trusting in the process, knowing that this is how it always begins, how it has always begun for as long as anyone can remember. As we rise higher, the sounds of the waking world begin to fade, becoming softer and more distant with each passing moment. The voices and footsteps and all the busy noise of day recede into the background, replaced gradually by the quieter sounds of night, the sounds that exist when everything else has fallen silent. These are the sounds that most people never hear, the sounds that can only be perceived when we stop trying to listen and simply allow ourselves to receive whatever the night wishes to offer. The air grows cooler as we climb, each additional measure of height bringing with it a slight drop in temperature that is pleasant rather than uncomfortable, a gentle reminder that we are moving between different layers of the atmosphere, different regions of the night. The coolness touches our face first, then our hands, then the rest of our body, a soft and even chill that does nothing to disturb our comfort, but simply adds to the sense of transition, of moving from one state of being to another. We can feel the breeze more clearly now, not as a single current, but as a collection of smaller movements, tiny streams of air that flow around us and past us and through us, each one carrying its own particular scent and temperature and character. Some are slightly warmer, having passed over land that still holds the heat of the day. Others are cooler, having traveled across the open water, where the sea releases the chill it has been storing in its depths. Together they create a constantly shifting sensation against the skin, a gentle massage of air that relaxes the body and calms the mind. The darkness around us is not complete, not total, but rather a soft and gentle dimness that allows shapes to be visible without being clearly defined. It is the kind of darkness that invites the imagination to fill in the details, that allows each person to see what they most need to see in this moment. There are no harsh edges here, no sharp contrasts, only gradual transitions from lighter to darker, from more visible to less visible, from known to mysterious. Below, the sea stretches out in every direction, a vast and endless expanse of dark velvet that seems to go on forever. The water is calm tonight, barely moving, only the slightest ripple disturbing its surface as the moonlight falls across it in long, shimmering paths. The moon itself hangs low and full in the sky, its light soft and silvery, casting everything in a gentle glow that makes the world feel distant and dreamlike. The light touches the water and spreads out in pale ribbons, wavering slightly as the sea breathes in and out with its own slow rhythm. It is a rhythm we can feel even from up here, suspended in the air, a steady pulse that matches the beating of our own hearts. The sea is ancient and patient, moving according to rhythms that were established long before any of us existed, and will continue long after we are gone. It rises and falls, swells and recedes, maintains its endless cycle without ever rushing, without ever slowing, simply moving at exactly the pace it has always moved, the pace that is most natural to it. There is something deeply comforting about this constancy, about knowing that some things never change, that some forces are too large and too fundamental to be affected by the small concerns of individual lives. From this height, we can see the way the moonlight interacts with the water, creating patterns that shift and change moment by moment, but somehow always look the same. The light breaks apart on the surface, scattering into 1,000 small reflections that dance and shimmer, each one a tiny mirror catching and releasing the moon's glow. These patterns are hypnotic to watch, drawing the eye without demanding attention, simply existing there below us as we drift overhead. The surface of the water is not perfectly smooth, we can see now, but covered with tiny variations in texture, small waves and ripples that create subtle differences in the way the light reflects. Some areas are darker, some lighter, some seem to glow from within, while others simply absorb the moonlight and hold it. The variations create a landscape of sorts, a geography of light and shadow that exists nowhere except on this particular stretch of water, on this particular night. We drift lower now, close enough to the water that we can hear it, a soft lapping sound that is almost more felt than heard, a gentle whisper that speaks of depth and mystery and the vast unknown spaces that exist beneath the surface. The sound is not constant, but comes in small waves, small moments of noise followed by small moments of silence, creating a rhythm that is similar to breathing, similar to sleeping, similar to all the gentle processes that sustain life without requiring any conscious effort or attention. The air directly above the water is different from the air higher up. We notice this as we pass through different layers. It is slightly warmer here, heated by the water below, and it carries more of that salt scent, mixed with other smells that come from the sea, from the plants and creatures that live in and around it. There is a smell of kelp, rich and slightly earthy, and underneath that the clean smell of water that has been cleansed by the sun and the wind and its own constant movement. Small sounds reach us from the surface of the water, sounds that could only be heard from close by, sounds that are lost if you are too high above or too far away. A small splash, perhaps a fish breaking the surface, or perhaps just the water moving in a particularly energetic way. A soft gurgle where the water flows around something just beneath the surface, a rock or a piece of driftwood, or some other obstacle that creates a small disturbance in the otherwise smooth flow. These sounds are part of the larger song of the sea, small notes in a composition that is always playing, always evolving, never quite the same from one moment to the next, but always recognizable as itself. Ahead in the distance, the outline of Neverland begins to take shape against the dark sky. The trees rise up from the shoreline, tall and swaying, their branches moving together in a slow, synchronized dance that seems almost deliberate, as though they are waving to welcome us back. The island is quiet tonight, peaceful, with no sounds of adventure or excitement, only the soft rustle of leaves and the distant whisper of the tide as it touches the sand and pulls away again. There are no bright lights, no fires burning, only the soft glow of the moon reflecting off the water and the faint shimmer of starlight filtering through the canopy of trees. The silhouette of the island grows more distinct as we approach, its shape becoming clearer against the backdrop of the star-filled sky. The tree line rises and falls in gentle undulations, following the contours of the land beneath, creating an irregular but pleasing outline that speaks of natural growth, of plants and terrain that have developed according to their own patterns rather than according to any plan or design. Some trees are taller than others, reaching up toward the sky as if trying to touch the stars. Others are shorter, broader, spreading their branches out horizontally to create wide canopies that provide shelter for whatever lies beneath them. Even from this distance, we can begin to sense the character of the island, can feel its particular energy and presence. It is not imposing or overwhelming, but gentle and welcoming, radiating a sense of safety and rest that draws us forward without any need for urgency or haste. The island simply exists there ahead of us, patient and constant, waiting for us to arrive in our own time, at our own pace, without any pressure or expectation. The stars above the island seem particularly bright tonight, or perhaps it is simply that we are paying more attention to them now that we have something to see them against, a dark backdrop that makes their light stand out more clearly. They are scattered across the sky in their usual random patterns, some clustered close together and others standing alone, each one a tiny point of light in the vast darkness of space. Some of them twinkle and shimmer, their light passing through layers of atmosphere that cause it to waver and dance. Others shine steadily, unwavering, as though nothing could disturb their constant glow. The constellations are visible up there, the patterns that people have been seeing and naming for thousands of years, connecting the stars with imaginary lines to create pictures and stories in the sky. We do not need to know their names or their stories to appreciate them, to feel the sense of wonder and connection that comes from looking up and seeing the same stars that countless others have seen before us, that countless others will see after we are gone. They are a reminder of continuity, of the way some things persist even as everything else changes, even as individual lives come and go like waves on the shore. The air between us and the island is clear and clean, free from any haze or cloud that might obscure the view. We can see everything clearly, or as clearly as the moonlight allows, which is clear enough for our purposes, clear enough to navigate by, clear enough to appreciate the beauty of the scene before us. The distance between us and the island is closing gradually, steadily, without any sudden acceleration or change in pace. We move at exactly the right speed, a speed that allows us to observe and appreciate without rushing past anything important. We drift closer, moving without effort, carried by the same gentle breeze that brought us here. The air grows warmer as we approach the island, warmed by the land itself, by the earth and the plants and the life that grows here. The scent of jasmine becomes stronger, mingling now with the smell of damp moss and the rich, earthy fragrance of soil that has been warmed by the sun during the day and is now cooling under the night sky. There is something deeply comforting about these smells, something familiar and safe, as though the island itself is welcoming us home. As we pass over the shoreline, the sound of the sea begins to fade, replaced by the softer sounds of the forest. The trees here are ancient and tall, their trunks thick and gnarled with age, their branches spreading out overhead to form a canopy that filters the moonlight into soft, dappled patterns on the ground below. The leaves whisper to each other in the breeze, a quiet conversation that has no beginning and no end, just a steady murmur that blends with the other sounds of the night. Somewhere in the distance a night bird calls out, its voice low and melodic, and then falls silent again. The island breathes around us, slow and steady, a living presence that asks for nothing and offers everything. We descend gradually, moving through the layers of the canopy, passing through branches and leaves that brush gently against us as we go. The air here is cooler, shaded by the trees, and it carries with it the scent of the forest floor, of damp earth and decaying leaves, and the sweet smell of flowering vines that climb the tree trunks and hang in long, trailing curtains. The light is softer here, filtered through so many layers of leaves that it seems almost green, or perhaps blue, a color that exists somewhere between moonlight and shadow. The canopy is a world unto itself. We realize as we move through it, a space that exists between the ground and the sky, between earth and air. It is inhabited by countless small creatures that we cannot see, but can sense, can feel the presence of in the subtle movements of leaves and the small sounds that emerge from the darkness. Birds sleeping on their perches, their heads tucked under their wings. Small mammals curled in nests they have built in the crooks of branches. Insects resting on the undersides of leaves, waiting for the morning light. The branches create patterns around us as we descend, dark lines that cross and intersect and diverge again, forming a complex network that seems random but is actually the result of years of growth, of each branch reaching toward the light, finding its own path through the crowded space of the canopy. Some branches are thick and substantial, capable of supporting considerable weight. Others are thin and delicate, barely more than twigs, swaying gently in the slightest breeze. The leaves are of many different shapes and sizes. We can see this even in the dim light. Some are broad and flat, designed to catch as much light as possible. Others are narrow and pointed, better suited to shedding water during the rains that come to the island. Some are smooth and waxy, while others have a rougher texture, slightly fuzzy to the touch. Each type of leaf has its own particular way of filtering the moonlight, creating different patterns of light and shadow, different qualities of illumination. Vines hang between the trees, connecting them in a network of living bridges and pathways. Some of these vines are as thick as a person's arm, old and established, having grown here for many years. Others are newer, thinner, still in the process of finding their way from one tree to another. They hang in graceful curves, responding to gravity but also to their own internal drives, reaching always toward the next support, the next anchor point that will allow them to continue their growth. Small flowers bloom on some of these vines, their petals closed for the night, waiting for the sun to return before opening again to display their colors. Even closed, they have a certain beauty, a perfect symmetry that speaks of the natural order of things, of the way life organizes itself according to patterns that are both functional and aesthetic. The flowers give off a faint scent, barely perceptible, but adding to the overall fragrance of the forest, contributing their small part to the larger olfactory experience. As we continue to descend, we pass through different zones of the forest, each one with its own character, its own particular combination of plants and light and air. The uppermost levels are the driest, exposed to the most sun and wind during the day. The middle levels are more sheltered, more protected, creating conditions where different types of plants can thrive. The lower levels where we are headed are the dampest and darkest, the coolest and most protected, the place where the forest floor meets the canopy, and where the moss grows thick and soft. Eventually we come to rest in a small clearing, a quiet space tucked away beneath the roots of an enormous tree. This is the home under the ground, the secret place where the lost boys come to rest when the day's adventures are done. It is not a grand place, not filled with treasures or decorations, but it is warm and safe, and exactly what it needs to be. The entrance is hidden beneath a tangle of roots and vines, barely visible unless you know where to look, and inside, the space is cozy and dimly lit by the soft glow of a few carefully placed fireflies that have been invited to stay. The tree above us is old beyond measure, its roots reaching deep into the earth, spreading out in all directions to create a natural architecture of hollows and chambers and covered spaces. The main root, the one that forms the ceiling of our shelter, is as wide as several people standing side by side, its surface rough and textured, covered in places with moss and small plants that have found purchase in the cracks and crevices of the bark. The wood is solid and strong, a reliable roof that has protected this space from rain and wind for longer than anyone can remember. The walls of the clearing, such as they are formed by the smaller roots that descend from the tree above, creating a natural enclosure that is open enough to allow air to circulate but sheltered enough to provide a sense of containment and security. These roots are of varying thicknesses, some as slender as a finger and others as thick as a leg, all of them twisting and turning as they make their way down to the soil, following the most efficient path to the nutrients and water they need. Between the roots, curtains of moss and vines hang down, softening the look of the space, making it feel more like a room and less like simply a gap between tree parts. The floor is covered entirely in moss, a thick carpet of green that is soft enough to sleep on, springy enough to cushion a fall, and damp enough to stay cool even on the warmest days. This moss has been growing here for years, building up slowly, adding layer upon layer until it has reached its current depth. It is alive, of course, each tiny plant contributing to the whole, creating through their collective effort a surface that is perfect for rest. The moss requires nothing from those who use it, asks for no care or maintenance, simply continues to grow and exist, providing its service without any expectation of return. Around the edges of the clearing, small shelves and alcoves have formed naturally in the root structure, creating spaces where the lost boys keep their few possessions. A carved wooden figure sits in one alcove, smoothed by countless touches. A collection of interesting stones occupies another, each one chosen for some quality that caught a boy's eye during his explorations. A few bird feathers are arranged carefully on another shelf, their colors still bright despite the dim light. These are not valuable things in any conventional sense, but they are treasured nonetheless, each one representing a memory, a moment, a piece of the larger story of life on the island. The Lost Boys are already here, settling in for the night. They move slowly, without hurry, each one finding their own spot among the soft piles of moss and the blankets made from oversized leaves that have been gathered from the forest. There is no talking, no loud voices or laughter, only the quiet rustle of movement and the occasional soft sigh as someone finds a comfortable position and settles in. The mood is peaceful, calm, a shared understanding that this time is for rest, for letting the day slip away and allowing the night to take over. Each boy has his own particular routine, his own way of preparing for sleep. One carefully arranges his leaf blanket, smoothing it out with patient hands, making sure there are no wrinkles or folds that might become uncomfortable during the night. Another adjusts his moss pillow, fluffing it slightly and then patting it down to exactly the right firmness, testing it with his head, and then adjusting again until it is perfect. A third simply lies down where he is, trusting that the moss will provide all the comfort he needs without any additional preparation. The blankets they use are remarkable things, each one made from a single enormous leaf that has fallen from one of the giant plants that grow in the deeper parts of the forest. These leaves are as large as a grown person, perhaps larger, and they have a waxy surface that repels moisture while still remaining soft and flexible. The boys have learned to treat them carefully, to fold them in certain ways that preserve their integrity, that prevent them from cracking or tearing. Each blanket has been used many times, showing signs of wear in some places, but still fundamentally sound, still capable of providing warmth and comfort through the night. Some of the boys sleep alone, preferring their own space, their own small territory within the larger clearing. Others sleep close together, seeking the comfort of proximity, the reassurance that comes from being near another person. There is no judgment about either choice, no sense that one way is better than the other. Each boy simply does what feels right to him, what allows him to feel most comfortable and secure. The youngest of the Lost Boys, a small figure curled into a tight ball on the far side of the clearing, clutches something close to his chest as he settles in for sleep. It might be a favorite stone or a piece of driftwood or some other small object that provides comfort through its familiarity. His eyes are already closed, his breathing already beginning to slow into the deeper rhythm of sleep. He has found his spot quickly tonight, has settled easily into rest, and the others smile slightly as they notice this, pleased that he is at peace. Another boy sits for a long moment before lying down, his back straight, his hands resting on his knees, his eyes looking at nothing in particular, or perhaps looking at everything, taking in the whole scene of the clearing, and his brothers preparing for sleep. He is not reluctant to sleep, not resisting the pull of rest, but simply taking this moment to be present, to witness this small ritual of settling in, to appreciate the peace and safety of this place before surrendering to sleep. One by one, the boys find their positions and become still, their movements gradually ceasing until the clearing is filled with motionless forms, with the steady rise and fall of breathing chests, with the complete relaxation that comes when the body knows it is safe and can release all tension, all vigilance, all effort. The transition from waking to sleeping is gentle here, not a sharp boundary that must be crossed, but a gradual fading, a soft letting go that happens naturally when conditions are right. We find our own place to sit, a patch of soft moss near the edge of the clearing, where we can see the others, but also have a view of the night sky through a gap in the canopy above. The moss is cool and slightly damp, and it gives gently beneath us as we settle down, molding itself to our shape in a way that feels supportive and comforting. From here we can see the moon through the trees, still bright and full, its light filtering down through the leaves and creating patterns of silver and shadow all around us. One of the lost boys begins to hum, a low and melodic sound that has no words, just a simple tune that rises and falls in a gentle rhythm. It is a lullaby, though not one that anyone has ever taught or learned, just something that comes naturally when the night is quiet and the time for sleep is near. The others join in, not all at once, but one by one, their voices blending together in a soft harmony that fills the space without overwhelming it. The sound is soothing, a reminder that we are not alone, that there are others here who share this moment, this place, this quiet time of rest. As we listen to the lullaby, our eyes begin to wander, taking in the small details of the space around us. A firefly drifts past, its light blinking on and off in a slow, lazy pattern, and we watch it as it moves through the air, seemingly without direction or purpose, just wandering wherever the night takes it. The light it carries is soft and warm, a tiny glow that illuminates nothing but itself, and yet it is enough to draw the eye, to hold the attention for a moment before it moves on and is replaced by another thought, another observation. The firefly's path is unpredictable, a wandering line through three-dimensional space that follows no logic we can discern. It rises toward the canopy, then descends again. It moves to the left, then curves back to the right. It pauses in mid-air, hovering in one spot for a long moment, its light blinking steadily, and then it continues on its journey, moving with that same unhurried grace that characterizes everything here on the island during these quiet nighttime hours. We wonder, watching the firefly, what it must be like to move through the world in that way, without destination, without plan, simply existing in each moment and allowing that moment to determine the next movement, the next direction. There is a freedom in that kind of existence, a simplicity that is both appealing and slightly incomprehensible to minds that are used to purpose and intention, and the need to arrive somewhere specific by some specific time. The firefly's light is not constant, but pulses in a rhythm that seems to have meaning, though what that meaning might be is unknown to us. Perhaps it is a signal to other fireflies, a way of communicating position or availability, or some other piece of information that is important to their kind. Perhaps it is simply a function of their biology, a chemical reaction that happens at regular intervals without any conscious control or intention. Either way, the effect is beautiful. This small point of light appearing and disappearing in the darkness, creating a gentle pattern that is pleasant to watch. Another firefly joins the first, or perhaps it has been there all along, and we are only now noticing it. This one follows its own path, its own pattern of movement and blinking, and for a moment the two fireflies cross paths, their lights blinking in near synchronization, creating a brief moment of connection before they diverge again and continue on their separate ways. It is a small moment, meaningless perhaps, but somehow significant nonetheless, a reminder that even in the midst of apparent solitude, there are always others nearby, always connections being made and broken and made again. We follow these fireflies with our eyes, not actively tracking them, but simply allowing our gaze to drift where they lead. And in doing so, we notice other things about the clearing, other small details that might have otherwise escaped our attention. The way the moonlight catches on a particular leaf, making it glow slightly brighter than the leaves around it. A small gap in the canopy directly above us, through which a single star is visible, its light steady and unchanging. The pattern of shadow created by an overhanging root, a dark shape against the slightly less dark background of the moss-covered floor. Near the center of the clearing, one of the lost boys is carefully tucking a blanket around himself, pulling it up to his chin and smoothing it down with slow, deliberate movements. He is not in a hurry, not anxious to finish and move on to something else. He is simply taking his time, making sure everything is just right before he allows himself to drift off to sleep. There is something deeply satisfying about watching this simple routine, about seeing someone take care with the small details of comfort and preparation. It is a reminder that rest is something to be approached with intention, not rushed into or taken for granted. The air in the clearing is still not moving, just resting there among the trees and the moss and the quiet bodies of the lost boys as they prepare for sleep. The temperature is perfect, not too warm and not too cool, just that ideal point where the body can relax completely without needing to adjust or shift or seek out a different position. The sounds of the island continue in the background, a constant presence that never intrudes but never entirely fades away either. The distant lap of the tide, the whisper of the wind through the hollow trees, the occasional call of a night bird, all of these sounds blend together into a steady, comforting pulse that seems to come from the island itself. We close our eyes for a moment just to rest them, and when we do, the sounds become even more clear, even more present. Without the distraction of sight, the world becomes a landscape of sound and sensation, of the soft pressure of the moss beneath us, and the cool touch of the night air on our skin, and the gentle rhythm of our own breathing as it slows and deepens. The lullaby continues, softer now, as though the singers are themselves beginning to drift toward sleep, their voices fading in and out, like the blinking light of the fireflies. When we open our eyes again, the moon has moved slightly in the sky, though it is hard to say how much time has passed. Time here is not something that can be measured in the usual way, not something that moves forward in a straight line with minutes and hours that accumulate and add up to something larger. Instead, time here is circular, or perhaps it does not move at all. Perhaps it simply exists, a constant and unchanging presence that allows for rest without the pressure of what comes next. Another firefly drifts past, and we watch it again, following its slow path through the air. It moves in a lazy arc, rising up toward the canopy, and then descending again, its light blinking in a pattern that seems random but also somehow intentional, as though it is communicating something that we cannot quite understand, but can appreciate nonetheless. The light is hypnotic, easy to watch, and we find ourselves following it with our eyes, letting it lead us wherever it wants to go. One of the lost boys shifts in his sleep, rolling over onto his side and pulling his blanket more tightly around himself. The movement is small, barely noticeable, but it creates a soft rustling sound that blends with the other sounds of the night. He settles again, his breathing slow and even, and the clearing returns to its previous state of stillness. There is no disturbance, no interruption, just a small adjustment and then peace again. The stars above are bright tonight, visible through the gaps in the canopy, scattered across the sky in patterns that have been there for as long as anyone can remember. They do not flicker or move, they simply shine, constant and unchanging. Small points of light that seem impossibly far away, and yet also close enough to touch. There is something reassuring about their presence, about knowing that they are there, that they will continue to be there, long after this night has passed and given way to the next. We take a deep breath, filling our lungs with the cool night air, and then let it out slowly, feeling the tension drain away with the exhale. There is nothing to hold on to, nothing to worry about or plan for or anticipate. There is only this moment, this place, this quiet time of rest. The island holds us, supports us, asks for nothing in return except that we allow ourselves to simply be here, to exist in this space without trying to change it or control it or make it into something other than what it is. The act of breathing becomes something to focus on, something to be aware of without trying to control or alter. Each inhale brings an air that is cool and fresh, carrying with it all those scents we have come to associate with the island, with this particular place, at this particular time. The air travels down into the lungs, filling them, providing the oxygen that the body needs to continue its basic functions. There is a brief pause at the top of the inhale, a moment of fullness, of completion, before the exhale begins. The exhale is longer than the inhale, more gradual, a slow release of air that carries with it any tension or tightness that might have been held in the chest or shoulders or anywhere else in the body. The air flows out, returning to the larger atmosphere, mixing again with all the other air that surrounds us, becoming indistinguishable from the breeze and the night and everything else. There is another pause at the bottom of the exhale, a moment of emptiness, of rest, before the next inhale begins and the cycle continues. This rhythm of breathing is so fundamental, so basic to existence, that it usually happens without any conscious awareness or attention. But here, in this quiet space, with nothing else demanding our attention, we can notice it, can appreciate it, can feel gratitude for this simple process that sustains life without requiring any effort or thought. The body knows how to breathe, has known since the first moment of life, and will continue to know until the last. It is something that can be trusted completely, something that will continue whether we pay attention to it or not. As we breathe, we can feel our chest rising and falling, can feel the expansion and contraction of the lungs, can notice the way the breath moves through the throat and the nose, creating small sensations that are usually too subtle to perceive but become noticeable when we are very still and very quiet. The air is slightly cooler on the inhale, having come from the outside, and slightly warmer on the exhale, having been heated by the body. This small difference in temperature creates a gentle alternating sensation that is pleasant to notice. The breathing begins to slow naturally, without any conscious effort to make it do so. Each breath takes slightly longer than the one before it, the pause between inhale and exhale stretching out, the pause between exhale and inhale extending. This slowing is a sign that the body is relaxing, is moving toward rest, is preparing for sleep. The nervous system is downshifting, moving from the active state of waking to the passive state of rest, and the breath reflects this transition, becoming deeper, slower, more measured. With each exhale, it feels as though we are sinking slightly deeper into the moss, as though gravity is increasing its gentle pull, encouraging us to let go even more fully, to release even more completely into the support that is being offered. The moss rises up around us slightly, conforming to our shape, creating a custom-fitted cradle that supports every part of our body in exactly the right way. There is no pressure point, no area where weight is concentrated uncomfortably, just an even distribution of support that allows every muscle to relax completely. The lullaby has stopped now, or perhaps it has simply faded so completely into the background that it can no longer be distinguished from the other sounds of the night. The lost boys are all asleep, or nearly so, their bodies still, and their breathing deep and regular. The clearing is filled with a sense of peace, a palpable calm that seems to radiate from the earth itself, from the trees and the moss and the very air that surrounds us. We shift slightly, adjusting our position to find an even more comfortable spot, and the moss gives beneath us, soft and yielding. The movement is small, almost imperceptible, but it creates a tiny change in the pressure against our body, a slight redistribution of weight that somehow makes everything feel even more settled, even more right. We let our eyes close again, not to sleep necessarily, but just to rest, to give them a break from the effort of looking and focusing and taking in the world around us. In the darkness behind our eyelids, the sounds of the island continue their steady rhythm. The tide is still lapping at the shore, somewhere in the distance, still pulling in and pushing out in its endless cycle. The wind is still moving through the hollow trees, still creating that soft, sighing sound that seems almost like breathing. The night birds are still calling to each other, their voices low and intermittent, a conversation that spans the length of the island and connects all of the quiet, hidden places where they rest. When we open our eyes once more, the world looks exactly as it did before, unchanged and unchanging. The moon is still bright, still casting its soft silver light across the clearing. The fireflies are still drifting through the air, their lights blinking in that same slow, hypnotic pattern. The lost boys are still sleeping, still wrapped in their leaf blankets, still breathing in that deep, steady way that speaks of complete relaxation and total peace. There is a sense of timelessness here, a feeling that this moment could last forever, or perhaps that it already has, that we have been here always and will continue to be here for as long as we choose to stay. There is no urgency to leave, no reason to move or change or do anything other than what we are doing right now, which is simply existing in this space, breathing this air, feeling this moss beneath us, and this cool breeze against our skin. The night deepens around us, not growing darker, exactly, but somehow becoming more itself, more complete in its nightness. The sounds continue, the light continues. The world continues in its slow and steady way, asking nothing of us except that we allow ourselves to be part of it, to rest here among the trees and the moss and the sleeping lost boys, to let go of everything that came before and everything that might come after, and simply be present in this single, endless moment. We notice the way the moonlight falls across one of the tree roots, creating a pattern of light and shadow that is both simple and intricate at the same time. The light pools in the hollows and ridges of the bark, highlighting the texture, making it visible in a way that it would not be during the day. The shadow follows the same contours, filling in the spaces where the light cannot reach, creating a balance, a harmony between the two that seems almost intentional, as though the tree and the moon have conspired together to create this small, beautiful thing for us to notice and appreciate. Another lost boy stirs, turning his head slightly on his makeshift pillow, which is nothing more than a bundle of soft moss gathered into a mound. His face is peaceful, relaxed, free from any trace of worry or concern. His breathing continues in its slow, steady pattern, and after a moment he settles again, returning to whatever dream he was having, whatever quiet place his mind has gone to while his body rests here in the clearing. The air smells of the island, of earth and plants and the faint, lingering scent of the sea that manages to reach even this far inland. It is a clean smell, fresh and natural, untainted by anything artificial or harsh. It is the smell of a place that has been left to grow and exist on its own terms, without interference or control, a place where nature is allowed to be exactly what it wants to be. We let our gaze drift upward again toward the canopy and the sky beyond it. The leaves are still moving in the breeze, but so slowly that it is almost imperceptible, just a gentle swaying that creates a subtle shifting in the patterns of moonlight and shadow. The stars are still there, still shining, still maintaining their eternal watch over the island and the sea and everything that exists beneath their light. There is a small sound, almost too quiet to hear, a soft rustling that might be a leaf falling or an insect moving through the undergrowth, or simply the island itself shifting and settling in the way that all living things do. We do not turn to look, do not try to identify the source, because it does not matter. It is simply another part of the night, another small element in the larger tapestry of sound and sensation that surrounds us. The moss beneath us has grown warmer now, heated slightly by our body, and it cradles us in a way that feels almost intentional, as though it has shaped itself specifically for us, as though it wants nothing more than to provide this small comfort, this soft support. Our muscles have relaxed completely, releasing any tension they might have been holding, allowing our body to rest fully into the earth, to become part of the island for this brief time. One of the fireflies comes to rest on a nearby leaf, its light continuing to blink even as it sits still. We watch it, fascinated by the rhythm of its light, by the way it appears and disappears in a pattern that seems both regular and random at the same time. The light is warm, golden, rather than silver like the moonlight, and it creates a small circle of illumination around the leaf where it sits, making the green of the leaf visible for just a moment before the light goes out and the leaf disappears back into the general darkness. The clearing is so quiet now that we can hear our own heartbeat, a soft, steady thumping that seems to echo the rhythm of the tide, the rhythm of the wind, the rhythm of the island itself. It is reassuring, this sound, this proof that we are alive and present and part of this moment. It is a sound that requires nothing, that simply is, a constant presence that will continue whether we pay attention to it or not. We close our eyes again, and this time we allow them to stay closed, to rest there in the darkness while the world continues around us. The sounds are still there, still present, still creating that steady, comforting background that makes sleep possible. The moss is still soft beneath us, still warm and yielding. The air is still cool and fresh, still carrying those scents of earth and plants and distant sea. Time passes, though we could not say how much. It might be minutes or hours or something in between, something that cannot be measured in the usual ways because it exists outside of the normal flow of time, in a place where such measurements have no meaning. The night continues, unchanged and unchanging, a constant presence that holds us gently in its embrace. When we open our eyes next, the world is exactly as it was before, or perhaps slightly softer, slightly more dreamlike, as though the boundary between waking and sleeping has begun to blur, as though we are existing in that space between the two, where everything is possible and nothing is certain. The moon is still there, still bright, still casting its light across the clearing. The Lost Boys are still sleeping, still peaceful, still wrapped in their blankets and their dreams. Another firefly drifts past, or perhaps it is the same one from before. It is impossible to tell. Its light blinks in that same slow pattern, and we watch it for a moment before letting our gaze drift away again, moving across the clearing to take in the other small details that make up this space. A vine hanging from a branch, its leaves dark green and glossy in the moonlight. A small stone half buried in the moss, its surface smooth and rounded by time. A patch of tiny flowers, barely visible in the dim light, their petals closed for the night. Each of these things is small, insignificant on its own, but together they create a whole, a complete picture of this place, this moment. They are the building blocks of the night, the individual pieces that come together to form the larger experience of rest and peace and safety. We do not need to understand them or analyze them or assign them meaning. We simply need to notice them, to allow them to be part of our awareness, part of our experience of this place. The wind picks up slightly, just enough to create a gentle rustling in the leaves above, and then it dies down again, returning the clearing to its previous state of stillness. The sound was brief, a small interruption in the quiet, but it was not unwelcome. It was simply a reminder that the world is still here, still moving in its own slow way, still breathing and existing and carrying on with its ancient rhythms. We take another deep breath, letting the air fill our lungs completely before releasing it in a slow, controlled exhale. The act of breathing has become almost meditative, a focus point that anchors us in the present moment, that prevents our mind from wandering too far into thoughts of past or future. There is only now, only this breath, only this moment of stillness and peace. The moss shifts slightly beneath us as we adjust our position one more time, seeking that perfect spot of comfort where every part of our body is supported and relaxed. We find it or something close to it, and we settle there, allowing our weight to rest fully into the earth, allowing the island to hold us completely. There is no resistance, no tension, just a gentle giving in to the support that is being offered. One of the Lost Boys makes a small sound in his sleep, a soft murmur that might be the beginning of a word or might be nothing at all, just a meaningless vocalization that comes from some deep place in his dreaming mind. The sound fades quickly, absorbed by the moss and the trees and the night air, and he returns to silence, his breathing continuing in its slow, steady rhythm. The stars above seem brighter now, or perhaps our eyes have simply adjusted further to the darkness, allowing us to see more of them, to pick out individual points of light that were invisible before. They are scattered across the visible patch of sky, some bright and some dim, some seeming to pulse slightly, and others remaining constant and unchanging. They form patterns that might be constellations or might be nothing more than random arrangements. It does not matter either way. They are simply there, part of the night sky, part of the larger universe that exists beyond this small clearing, beyond this island, beyond anything we can fully comprehend. The moonlight continues to fall in soft patterns across the clearing, creating areas of brightness and areas of shadow, defining the space without harsh boundaries or clear divisions. Everything blends together gently, one thing flowing into the next without any sharp transitions or sudden changes. The light touches the leaves, the moss, the sleeping forms of the lost boys, treating everything with the same soft, gentle illumination that reveals without exposing, that shows without demanding to be seen. We let our eyes close once more, and this time there is no effort in keeping them closed, no need to deliberately hold them shut. They simply stay closed on their own, as though they have decided that this is where they want to be, that this is the most comfortable, most natural position for them right now. The darkness behind our eyelids is complete, but it is not frightening or uncomfortable. It is simply another form of the same peace that surrounds us, another way of experiencing the night and the rest it offers. The sounds continue their steady progression, each one maintaining its own rhythm while also contributing to the larger symphony of night sounds that fills the clearing. The tide, the wind, the occasional bird call, the rustling of leaves, all of these sounds weave together into a pattern that is both complex and simple, both varied and constant. It is the sound of the island breathing, of the world continuing its existence without any need for our participation or attention. Time continues to pass, or perhaps it does not pass at all. Perhaps it simply exists, a constant presence that we move through, rather than something that moves through us. The distinction does not seem important here, in this place where the normal rules do not seem to apply, where everything is softer and slower and more forgiving than in the waking world. Our breathing has slowed even further, matching the rhythm of the sleeping lost boys around us, matching the rhythm of the tide and the wind and the heartbeat of the island itself. Each breath comes easily, naturally, without any conscious effort or thought. Inhale, exhale, a simple pattern that has repeated itself countless times and will continue to repeat for as long as we remain here, resting in this quiet place. The moss has molded itself completely to our form now, creating a perfect impression of our body, a custom-made resting place that seems designed specifically for this moment, for this particular configuration of limbs and torso and head. It is soft and supportive all at once, providing exactly the right amount of cushioning in exactly the right places, allowing our body to release any remaining tension and simply exist in a state of complete relaxation. Another firefly blinks into view, or perhaps it is the same one returning for another pass through the clearing, drawn by some impulse or instinct that only it understands. Its light creates a small moving point of warmth in the cool darkness, a tiny beacon that serves no practical purpose, but is beautiful nonetheless, a small gift from the night to anyone who takes the time to notice and appreciate it. The moonlight shifts almost imperceptibly as the moon continues its slow journey across the sky, changing the patterns of light and shadow in the clearing by the smallest degree. The change is so gradual so gentle, that it would be impossible to notice if we were watching for it. But when we compare this moment to the memory of earlier moments, we can sense that something has shifted, that the night has progressed in its quiet, patient way. The lost boys sleep on, undisturbed by the passage of time or the subtle changes in light or anything else that might be happening in the world around them. They have found their rest, their peace, and they are held safely within it, protected by the canopy above and the earth below and the circle of their companions around them. There is no danger here, no threat, nothing that could disturb this perfect quiet. We let our awareness drift, not quite sleeping, but not quite fully awake either, existing in that pleasant space between the two, where thoughts come and go without effort, where the mind can wander freely without any particular destination or purpose. Images might float through our consciousness, fragments of memories or dreams or simple observations about the space around us, but none of them stay for long. None of them demand attention or insist on being examined or understood. They simply pass through like clouds drifting across the sky, visible for a moment and then gone. The air continues to move in small, gentle currents, never still but never agitated, just flowing in its own quiet way through the trees and across the clearing, touching everything softly and moving on. It carries with it the sense we have grown familiar with over the course of the night, the earth and plants and sea, mixing them together and presenting them to us in an ever-changing but always pleasant combination. Our body has become so relaxed that we are barely aware of it anymore, the boundaries between ourselves and the moss beneath us growing less distinct, less important. We are part of the island now, or perhaps we always were. Perhaps that distinction between self and environment is something that only exists in the waking world and has no place here in this realm of rest and dreams. The night deepens still further, reaching that point where it is most fully itself, where the darkness is complete but not oppressive, where every sound seems both closer and more distant at the same time, where the boundary between the physical world and the world of sleep becomes so thin as to be almost non-existent. This is the heart of the night, the deepest part, the most restful part, the time when sleep comes most easily and most completely. The fear flies continue their slow dance through the air, their lights blinking on and off, in patterns that never quite repeat, but always seem familiar, always seem right. They move without hurry, without apparent purpose, simply existing in the space and the moment, being exactly what they are without any need to be anything else. There is something to learn from them, perhaps, something about existing without striving, about moving through the world with grace and ease and a simple acceptance of what is. One by one, the sounds of the island begin to fade, not because they have stopped, but because our awareness of them is gently slipping away, moving toward that place where external sensations no longer register, where the world of dreams takes over completely, and the waking world becomes distant and unimportant. The tide continues its rhythm, the wind continues its whisper, but they are growing softer now, more like memories of sounds than sounds themselves. The lost boys breathe in their sleep, their chests rising and falling in that slow, steady pattern, and somewhere in the fading edges of our awareness, we can sense that rhythm, can feel it as though it were our own breathing, as though all of us together were one single being, breathing together, resting together, existing together in this quiet space beneath the trees. The moon reaches its highest point in the sky, directly overhead now, its light falling straight down through the gaps in the canopy, creating small pools of brightness on the floor of the clearing. These pools of light are soft and diffuse, their edges blending gradually into the surrounding darkness, creating no harsh contrasts, no sharp boundaries, just a gentle transition from light to not light, from visibility to mystery. In this light, the clearing seems even more dreamlike than before, even more removed from the ordinary world of waking life. Everything has a soft, ethereal quality, as though it exists not quite in the physical realm, but somewhere adjacent to it, somewhere that can only be accessed in these quiet hours when the barriers between worlds are at their thinnest, when the possibility of magic is at its strongest. The moss glows faintly in the moonlight, each tiny plant catching and holding a small amount of that silver illumination, creating a subtle luminescence that spreads across the entire surface of the clearing floor. It is not bright enough to read by, not bright enough to clearly see details, but it is enough to create a sense of gentle wonder, a feeling that this place is special, that it exists outside the normal flow of time and space. Our eyes remain closed, or perhaps they have opened without us noticing. It is becoming difficult to tell the difference, difficult to maintain any clear distinction between seeing and not seeing, between being awake and being asleep. The boundaries are blurring, softening, dissolving into something that is neither one state nor the other, but something in between, something that can only exist here, in this place, in this moment. The fireflies have slowed their movement now, some of them coming to rest on leaves or branches, their lights continuing to blink, but at a slower pace, as though they too are winding down, preparing for some insect version of rest. Their lights create small constellations in the lower levels of the clearing, mimicking the stars above, but on a more intimate, more accessible scale. Time has lost all meaning now, all sense of forward progression. There is only this eternal present moment, stretching out in all directions, containing everything that has ever been and everything that ever will be, in this single, perfect point of stillness and peace. The past does not exist, the future does not exist. There is only now, only this breath, only this heartbeat, only this soft embrace of moss and moonlight and the gentle sounds of the sleeping island. The world fades gradually into a hazy glow of blue and silver, all details becoming less distinct, less important, dissolving into a general sense of peace and safety and rightness. The lost boys sleep, the island breathes, the moon shines, and we rest in the center of it all, held and supported and completely at peace, drifting in the warm current of a dream that has no end, that continues on and on into the soft infinity of the night.